My grandfather used to share a harsh truth while we repaired wooden hulls down at the old harbor dock. He told me that, if you feed a wild gull every morning from your own hand, that gull will eventually forget how to hunt across the open sea. And on the very first morning you arrive with empty hands, that same gull will not thank you for the thousands of meals you provided across the years. Instead, it will screech with indignation and try to peck out your eyes. Where are you listening from tonight? Drop the name of your home city down in the comment section below so I can see where our community is gathering around the world. Also, quick reminder that while today's narrative is a fictionalized audio drama inspired by real-life family conflicts, the underlying lessons about boundaries, financial independence, and self-respect are entirely real across every generation. My beloved daughter Vanessa poked her manicured index finger directly into my chest 3 distinct times. The first time her finger struck my ribs, she raised her voice and called me an archaic, out-of-touch relic who belonged in a museum. The second time her finger dug into my collarbone, her eyes narrowed with sneering contempt as she publicly labeled me a suffocating financial parasite, feeding off her youthful energy. And the third time her finger struck over my heart. Standing in the center of a dazzling Labor Day charity gala, in front of 60 wealthy socialites and design executives, she roared across the crystal-lit terrace that I was a deadweight anchor dragging down the future of her brand. The upbeat electronic music from the terrace speakers kept pulsing through the heavy evening air, while waiters stopped holding trays of champagne around the illuminated swimming pool. Her husband, Julian, stood 2 steps behind her near the marble balustrade, swirling a 25-year-old single malt scotch in his crystal tumbler. Julian wore a tailored beige linen suit that cost more than 3 months of wages for a skilled master carpenter, his hair styled immaculately with expensive salon pomade. Instead of stepping forward to diffuse the escalating confrontation or reminding his wife of elementary filial respect, Julian raised his high-end motorized camera gimbal. He adjusted the wide-angle lens with practiced precision to capture every single humiliating second of my public berating in razor-sharp 4K resolution. He wanted to broadcast my silent endurance to their 2 million social media followers across the world as proof of Vanessa's empowerment and her supposed liberation from parental control across the digital design sphere. The underlying trigger behind her public outburst was remarkably simple yet deeply illuminating regarding her true character. I had refused her aggressive demand to sign over a $300,000 cash withdrawal from my personal investment portfolio. She insisted she urgently needed that capital to secure an exclusive interior design booth at the upcoming Milan International Design Week and fund a 2-week promotional tour across northern Italy. When I calmly looked at her spreadsheets and informed her that my liquid capital reserves were allocated towards scheduled shipyard dry dock maintenance and employee retirement contributions, her sense of absolute entitlement erupted into a volcanic rage right across the open terrace. To Vanessa, my financial security and the livelihoods of 50 hard-working mechanics were secondary to her vanity and social media ambition. Julian lowered his motorized camera gimbal with a theatrical smirk, stepped under the glowing patio heaters, and slipped his arm around his wife's silk-clad waist. He looked down his nose at my worn canvas work jacket and sturdy leather boots, shaking his head in mock sympathy before the surrounding gala guests. He announced to the crowd that innovative visionaries like Vanessa could never achieve their full global potential while shackled to stubborn traditionalists who refused to embrace modern brand scaling. A low, mocking murmur rippled through the circle of affluent venture capitalists and design consultants holding their champagne flutes. Instead of uttering a single word of protest or raising my voice in anger, I simply met my daughter's furious gaze with a steady, unblinking look of profound clarity, turned around on my heels, and walked toward the exit without glancing back once. I walked down the long paved driveway lined with imported Mediterranean cypress trees, the mocking laughter of Julian and his high society friends echoing behind my back through the cool evening mist. For 6 continuous years, I had quietly played the role of their uncomplaining financial guarantor, absorbing their exorbitant lifestyle expenses while deliberately concealing the true magnitude of my maritime commercial empire. I wanted to see whether my daughter possessed genuine character, resilience, and personal discipline, or whether she would succumb to the intoxicating allure of superficial luxury and unearned prestige. As my leather boots crunched steadily against the gravel path, I acknowledged that my fatherly experiment had formally concluded with devastating finality. Vanessa had made her choice under the glaring party lights, and now she would face reality on her own financial terms. Every single architectural drawing she uploaded to her public profile was drafted by my internal marine engineering team, modified slightly with interior styling notes, and presented as her own original genius. For over half a decade, I had silently financed her illusion of independent grandeur, waiting patiently for the day she would finally acknowledge the hard-working shipyard workers who made her luxurious lifestyle possible. Online, under her verified handle as the High Society Design Muse, Vanessa presented herself to 2 million adoring followers as a self-made interior architecture prodigy who had built her design agency through her own brilliant aesthetic instinct. Her digital profile was a masterpiece of curated deception, flawless high-resolution photographs showing her sketching minimalist furniture inside sunlit penthouses, sipping champagne on chartered yachts, and lecturing about financial independence at luxury retreats. In every single interview, she dismissed her family background as unremarkable, claiming she had risen from modest origins without financial assistance. Her followers worshipped her as an empowered feminine icon of modern business acumen, entirely unaware that every luxury lease, server fee, and dinner invoice was quietly underwritten by my firm through automated corporate wire transfers. Let us examine the $4.5 million modern cliffside residence overlooking the ocean, where Vanessa and Julian hosted their lavish Labor Day gala tonight. She told her magazine interviewers that the estate was secured through her interior design earnings and corporate brand sponsorships. In absolute truth, the property deed, the $12,000 monthly property tax assessment, and the comprehensive insurance policy were registered directly under Vance Marine Engineering, my primary commercial holding entity. I had leased the estate to her corporate agency for a symbolic $1 per year under a conditional revocable tenancy agreement designed to protect her from market volatility. She lived in architectural splendor atop the coastal cliffs, not because she earned it through sweat, but because my maritime steel fabrication contracts paid the mortgage every month without fail. The custom Porsche 911 Turbo and the secondary Range Rover Velar parked inside the gated courtyard were identical studies in financial illusion. Julian frequently filmed high-speed driving vlogs along the Pacific Coast Highway, boasting about how his creative brand consulting generated enough cash flow to acquire German engineering paid in full. Yet the title documents resting securely inside my corporate, fireproof safe confirmed both vehicles were commercial fleet, leases underwritten directly by my Maritime Treasury Department. Even the $2,400 monthly membership dues at the ultra-exclusive L'Atelier du Port Dining Club in the St. Regis Golf and Racquet Club were charged automatically to my corporate platinum accounts. I had built a velvet fortress of absolute security around my daughter, and she had mistaken my generosity for weakness for far too many years. My Ford F-250 pulled into the secured private parking facility beneath the headquarters of Vance Marine Engineering, down at the Commercial Harbor District. The saltwater scent of tide pools and heavy industrial grease filled the cool night air as I walked through the biometric security turnstile and rode the private elevator up to the 10th floor executive suite. Unlike Vanessa's minimalist studio filled with imported Italian marble and pastel silk draperies, my command center was designed for heavy commercial utility, solid teakwood desks, bronze ship binnacles, and 4 expansive digital monitors tracking global shipping freighters, shipyard repair schedules, and maritime asset allocations across the Pacific Rim. Standing before the reinforced floor-to-ceiling glass windows, overlooking the brightly illuminated dry docks below, I felt zero hesitation regarding what needed to be done. I sat down in my high-backed leather chair, unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk, and pulled out the master legal and financial ledger labeled Projected Asset Allocation, Vanessa Vance. For 30 minutes, in absolute silence, broken only by the low hum of the harbor ventilation turbines, I reviewed every single financial tie, corporate guarantee, and credit extension linking my maritime conglomerate to her luxury brand, Elysian Escapes. She had built her entire business model on a house of cards supported entirely by my invisible foundation. Tonight, standing on that crystal-lit terrace in front of 60 witnesses, she had declared to the world that I was a deadweight anchor dragging her down. It was time to honor her explicit public request with clinical precision and sever the heavy anchor cable, holding her fantasy world afloat above the harsh waters of reality. At 1 o'clock in the morning, I turned my chair toward my primary dual-monitor workstation, and logged directly into my corporate treasury administration dashboard, using my dual-factor hardware security key. I opened the Executive Vehicle Fleet Management module and highlighted the 2 vehicle leases registered under Vance Marine Engineering: Julian's custom Porsche 911 Turbo and Vanessa's Range Rover Velar. I clicked the command labeled Terminate Lease, Authorize Immediate Asset Recovery. Within 3 seconds, the system generated 2 official electronic seizure warrants, transmitted directly to the Regional Automotive Recovery Agency, contracted by my firm. By 12 o'clock noon today, Julian's prized German sports car would be hoisted onto the back of a commercial flatbed tow truck. Next, I canceled their country club accounts with immediate effect. The most critical cut, however, was reserved for the corporate telecommunications and cloud infrastructure portal. For 5 years, I had maintained an enterprise-level mobile data and cloud hosting contract that provided unlimited 5G cellular connectivity and 10 terabytes of secure cloud storage across 5 top-tier smartphones and 3 tablet computers utilized by Vanessa and Julian. This enterprise data network was the technical engine that powered her verified social media presence and stored her Elysian Escapes investor presentations. I highlighted every single IMEI device profile and clicked Execute Immediate Service Termination, Suspend Cellular Connectivity, and Cloud Server Access. From that exact millisecond onward, their titanium smartphones became lifeless pieces of glass displaying only no service across the darkened digital display. 12 o'clock noon the following day arrived, with a sweltering heat wave that sent heat waves shimmering across the pavement. Inside the dining room of L'Atelier du Port, the most prestigious Michelin-starred restaurant, overlooking the yacht marina, the delicate strains of a classical string quartet drifted above the gentle clinking of crystal wine glasses. Vanessa sat at the center VIP corner table, wearing an Italian designer summer suit, pitching 2 prominent European hospitality financiers, Lindqvist and Mr. Laurent. This exclusive 2-hour luncheon was the most critical meeting of Vanessa's career. It would determine whether she secured a formal $2 million seed capital commitment to launch her Elysian Escapes boutique hotel brand across 3 Mediterranean properties. For the first 30 minutes, she spoke with boundless enthusiasm and absolute confidence. When the primary course was cleared, Vanessa picked up her high-end tablet to open her cloud-based presentation suite and show her 3D architectural renderings. The application icon spun in a repetitive circle before returning a stark gray error box. Connection failed, server access denied, no active data network. Assuming the restaurant's local wireless network was experiencing high traffic, she quickly switched over to her primary 5G enterprise cellular data connection. Instead of illuminating the data bars, the signal indicator remained entirely blank, replaced by 2 cold words: no service. She retrieved her titanium smartphone to activate a personal mobile hotspot, only to stare at the exact same status alert: no service, SIM inactive. Without her digital pitch decks or financial ledgers, her presentation deteriorated into an embarrassing public disaster. Precisely at 1:30 in the afternoon, Mr. Lindqvist stood up from the table. "Miss Vance," he said coldly, "our investment committee requires rigorous, verifiable financial documentation before we deploy capital. We will review our internal priorities and perhaps contact your office if our strategic focus changes." It was the ultimate institutional dismissal. The 2 European tycoons walked out of the restaurant without extending their hands for a handshake. Desperate to salvage her dignity before the remaining restaurant patrons, Vanessa snapped her fingers toward the head waiter and called for the check with exaggerated confidence. The total invoice came to exactly $1,250. Less than 3 minutes later, the general manager approached her corner table in a black tuxedo, holding the payment terminal in his white-gloved hands. "Excuse me, Miss Vance," the general manager whispered politely. "Our financial gateway returned an error regarding your payment card. The transaction was declined." The color instantly drained from Vanessa's cheeks. She forced an indignant smile and demanded that the manager process the transaction a second time immediately, insisting her primary checking accounts held hundreds of thousands of available funds. The manager inserted the card directly into the chip reader in front of her face. A loud, piercing, 2-toned error chime cut through the dining room as a bold red message appeared across the display. "Transconfined, account, terminated, written card." Surrounding guests turned their chairs to stare openly at the unfolding drama. Humiliated, Vanessa dug through her handbag, pulling out 3 secondary cards with the exact same result across the entire restaurant floor. While Vanessa was experiencing total social destruction inside L'Atelier du Port, her pretentious husband Julian was encountering a simultaneous catastrophe across town at the ultra-exclusive St. Regis Golf and Racquet Club. Julian was lounging inside the marble hydrotherapy spa after completing 18 holes of golf with 3 affluent contemporary art collectors. He sauntered up to the polished mahogany reception desk in his embroidered white silk bathrobe and handed the front desk attendant his sleek corporate supplementary card to settle his $1,800 invoice for VIP golf fees, champagne service, and massages. A sharp series of error tones buzzed through the quiet clubhouse lounge. The attendant wiped the stripe and swiped it a second time with the exact same rejection buzzer, before returning the card directly across the polished reception desk. Julian slammed his palm violently against the counter and pulled out his smartphone to call my office directly, only to stare at the signal bar displaying no service. Before he could create further disturbance, the security director approached, accompanied by 2 uniformed guards. Polite but unyielding, the director informed Julian that his membership profile had been formally terminated at 1 o'clock in the morning and requested immediate settlement of the $1,800 balance via alternative funds before he would be allowed to retrieve his personal belongings from the VIP locker room. Trapped before the watchful stares of the wealthy art collectors he had spent the morning trying to impress, Julian was forced to unbuckle his prized vintage gold Rolex wristwatch from his wrist and surrender it as collateral hold before walking out. Precisely at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 battered city commercial tow trucks rumbled through the wrought iron security gates of the Cliffside estate. While Julian was still arguing inside the clubhouse lounge across town, 2 burly recovery technicians secured heavy steel tow hooks for front axles of the custom Porsche 911 Turbo and the Range Rover Velar. When Vanessa arrived at the estate entrance 20 minutes later, in a local taxi having been forced to leave her gold diamond tennis bracelet with the restaurant manager to cover her lunch tab, she found her driveway entirely bare. She ran toward the front entrance doors of the mansion and pressed her finger against the biometric smart lock pad. Instead of sliding open with a smooth click, the LED indicator flashed crimson red and emitted a harsh 3-beep rejection warning echoing across the courtyard. "Miss Vance," the security officer said flatly. "The registered property owner, Vance Marine Engineering, executed an immediate commercial lease revocation order at 1 o'clock this morning due to breach of tenancy covenants. Your access codes have been purged from the master security controller, and your personal wardrobe and furnishings are currently being cataloged by an independent legal inventory team inside. You are instructed to vacate the perimeter driveway immediately, or I will be required to summon municipal police officers to enforce the trespassing injunction." Vanessa stood paralyzed on the limestone threshold, staring at the locked oak doors of the mansion she had pretended to own before millions of online followers. Without her corporate lease guarantee, she was an unauthorized stranger on my private commercial property. The iron gates swung open with a heavy metallic groan. The 2 European hospitality financiers, Mr. Lindqvist and Mr. Laurent, walked onto the terrace accompanied by their corporate legal counsel. Lindqvist did not offer a polite greeting. He dropped a thick legal binder directly onto the glass table right in front of Vanessa. "Our forensic accounting team completed an expedited background audit on your agency holdings during lunch," Lindqvist stated with freezing precision. "We discovered that L'Atelier du Port, the St. Regis Golf Club memberships, your corporate vehicle leases, and this very real estate property are registered commercial assets belonging to Vance Marine Engineering. You do not own a single dollar of the capital infrastructure you claimed in your prospectus. Your entire brand is a fraudulent misrepresentation of commercial assets." Just as Julian raised his hand to try and hail another passing taxi on the coastal highway outside the gate, his smartphone suddenly chimed with a high-priority system alert. The corporate cloud firewall had temporarily lifted just long enough to push a formal legal notification from the California State Department of Revenue directly onto their device screens. Julian stared at the PDF attachment in utter horror. "Emergency tax assessment notice, fraudulent corporate asset depreciation, immediate audit Caesar warrant. By claiming my corporate fleet vehicles, property leases and dining memberships as personal tax write-offs for their agency over 4 consecutive fiscal years without commercial authorization, Vanessa and Julian had accumulated $800,000 in back taxes and severe criminal fraud penalties across multiple tax years." In that single second, The dark secret behind her public lifestyle was exposed before the exact financial institutions she needed to survive. Vanessa tried to stammer out an explanation, claiming her father was a silent equity partner who had misunderstood their operating agreement, but Lindquist raised his hand to silence her immediately. "We do not partner with fraudulent operators, Miss Vance," he said coldly. "Our legal team has already submitted our preliminary findings to the Regional Financial Regulatory Authority to protect our institutional reputation. Do not attempt to contact our offices again." The two financiers turned and walked back through the iron gates toward their waiting limousine, leaving Vanessa and Julian standing alone on the dusty roadside gravel, under the blistering afternoon heat, without a single dollar to their names. 4:30 arrived as the yellow taxi screeched to a halt outside the polished glass skyscraper, housing the Elysian Escapes design studio downtown. Vanessa rushed through the revolving lobby doors, desperate to access her corporate bank accounts and transfer remaining operating revenues, before the state audit freeze locked every account. She sprinted across the marble lobby floor toward the private executive elevators, her heart hammering violently against her ribs. But as she approached the security turnstile, two armed corporate building guards stepped directly into her path with their arms crossed. "I am the founder and CEO of Elysian Escapes," Vanessa screamed, her voice cracking with hysteria as she slammed her palm against the glass barrier. "Step aside immediately before I have both of your employment contracts terminated, right now by my Human Resources Department." The elevator doors slid open on the 14th floor, revealing her design agency in a state of chaotic dismantling. A team of 8 professional commercial movers wearing heavy work jumpsuits were carefully packing her minimalist Italian desks, ergonomic office chairs, and drafting monitors into wooden transport crates. Standing right in the center of the studio, holding a clipboard and a master inventory manifest, was my senior corporate attorney, Marcus Sterling. Marcus was a veteran commercial litigator with 30 years of court experience and zero tolerance for dramatic emotional outbursts. When Vanessa stormed off the elevator demanding an immediate explanation, Marcus calmly turned a page on his clipboard, looked over his silver spectacles, and handed her an official 30-page legal document bound securely in blue covers. Right before Vanessa reached the central presentation table, Marcus raised his hand with freezing professional authority. "Miss Vance, please remain exactly where you are," Marcus stated clearly. "This commercial office space, along with all computer hardware, drafting equipment, and design software licenses currently within this suite, are leased directly under Vance Marine Engineering. At precisely 1 o'clock this morning, your primary corporate guarantor, your father, formally withdrew his surety bond and executed a master lease termination across all secondary commercial holdings. Because Elysian Escapes holds 0 independent capital reserves and has failed to satisfy the required corporate indemnity deposit, this commercial tenancy is terminated. Every piece of hardware inside this suite is currently being repossessed to offset outstanding corporate and commercial debts." As darkness fell over the city at 10 o'clock tonight, Vanessa and Julian sat shivering on a concrete bench inside the downtown Central bus terminal. Their designer suitcases were locked away inside the mansion inventory rooms, their credit cards were deactivated, and their smartphones were dead metal plates in their pockets. In less than 24 hours, the illusion of the high society design muse had been thoroughly eradicated. But rather than recognizing the profound arrogance of her public betrayal and feeling genuine remorse, Vanessa's mind twisted with bitter, vengeful desperation. She remembered a conversation from 3 years ago, when I mentioned keeping $300,000 in emergency cash reserves and negotiable bearer bonds locked inside the heavy steel safe inside my private boathouse down at the commercial shipyard along the fog-shrouded harbor. 11:45 at night arrived as the industrial shipyard surrounding the boathouse was swallowed by thick sea fog and graveyard silence. Vanessa stumbled along the slippery wooden dockboards leading to the boathouse entrance, her designer suit torn at the knees and covered in grease from squeezing through the perimeter fence. Her face was pale, drawn, and contorted with the wild madness of a cornered predator driven past sanity. She approached the side timber entrance door, where the administrative offices were located, and jammed the iron crowbar between the reinforced cedar door frame and the heavy brass deadbolt. Leaning her entire body weight against the iron bar, she strained her muscles until the heavy brass latch plate splintered through the cedar frame with a loud groan. She slipped inside to navigate toward my inner executive office. The heavy 3-inch thick solid steel safe door slowly swung open on its greased hinges, revealing the dark interior vault as Vanessa leaned forward with overwhelming greed and anticipation. She fully expected to see thick stacks of $100 bills totaling $300,000, beside neat rows of certified gold bullion bars and negotiable bearer bonds. But as the beam of white LED light illuminated the steel interior, Vanessa froze in utter paralysis. The heavy steel safe was completely bare, without a single dollar bill or gold bar resting on the shelves. The entire vault was empty except for one single crisp white sheet of heavy 80-pound bond paper, placed neatly in the center of the middle steel shelf. Trembling uncontrollably from head to foot, Vanessa picked up the white sheet to read 5 clear words written in bold ink. "I am watching you." Vanessa, as the tactical officers hauled Vanessa up onto her feet to march her out into the flashing red and blue strobe lights on the dock. She looked outside through the doorway and saw her husband Julian handcuffed and pressed face down against the hood of a state police cruiser by 2 Marine patrol officers, weeping and begging for mercy. The bear trap I had patiently constructed and set waiting for her, inside this harbor boathouse, was not fabricated from sharpened steel teeth designed to mangle her physical flesh or break her bones. It was a flawless, airtight, insurmountable legal trap and ironclad framework of verifiable felony evidence designed specifically to imprison her fraudulent career and her future behind 4 solid prison walls. As the police cruisers drove away toward the county jail, every single act of betrayal had been answered in full. 2 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, the formal criminal sentencing trial convened in open session inside the federal district courthouse downtown, beneath the glaring fluorescent lights of courtroom 3. Vanessa and Julian stood side by side behind the defense table, wearing standard-issue Orange County jail jumpsuits, their wrists and ankles secured in heavy steel transport chains that clinked softly whenever they shifted their feet, accompanied by 2 court-appointed public defenders, because they lacked financial capital to hire private legal counsel. Mounted high above the jury box on the courtroom's massive 80-inch digital evidentiary display screen, the federal prosecutor played the unedited 4K Labor Day terrace recording alongside the infrared night vision boathouse surveillance footage for the judge and jury to witness in absolute courtroom silence. When the presiding federal judge delivered his final sentence of 84 months in federal penitentiary, without possibility of early parole, neither Vanessa nor Julian dared to lift their eyes toward the public gallery, where I sat quietly in the back row, wearing my clean canvas work jacket and sturdy leather boots. Now, as the crisp autumn afternoon draws to a calm close, I sit quietly on the polished teakwood aft deck of my private 60-foot restored classic wooden schooner, the North Star, anchored peacefully in the protected Deepwater Cove, 3 miles off the Atlantic coast. The gentle, clean sea breeze flows smoothly across the open harbor waters, carrying the invigorating, salty freshness of the ocean and the warm rays of the setting sun. The profound, undisturbed silence out here on the open water stands in absolute, magnificent contrast to the cold, echoing clatter of heavy steel transport chains and slamming iron cell doors inside the high-security prison block, where my ungrateful daughter now resides. Resting right across my lap on the teakwood deck is my secure leather auditing tablet, alongside the final, certified legal operating charters for our next maritime venture.